but I wanted to give Simon enough time to get through his presentation, and we wanted to start that. Again, thank you for attending the conference today. I want to introduce this session and Simon. Szymon Machajewski is kind of makes me sad in many ways because he used to be our senior Blackboard solutions engineer and database administrator, and he decided that he wanted to teach. And he's an awesome teacher, so I'm happy for him in many ways, but yet sad as well, because he has left us and has now gone to the other side, which is the faculty side, which is just as equally important as well. So I want to introduce him. He teaches computer apps and also does a lot of programming and development. Has written several building blocks that are very popular in the community. Recently at the Blackboard conference, won a Blackboard Catalyst Award, which is an award given to recognize active individuals in the community around innovative development. And so it's a good honor for him. And he's going to talk today about mobile development. And so, Simon, take it away.
Thank you, Eric. Welcome to ETOM and welcome to this presentation. First of all, I do want to give a shout out to Gary, Brand, and Eric for supporting technology at GRCC. In fact, anytime we have some innovation taking place, like mobile, it takes leaders to really provide resources and environment. In fact, our CIO is very supportive of our mobile development, so that's the kind of environment where we can do things like that. Today, I wanted to talk to you about two things. One is, what if you wanted to teach a course about mobile development? How could you do that? And the second one is, what if you wanted to develop mobile apps in your office? What would be the most efficient way of doing that? So a couple of areas we'll focus on. But first of all, how many of you actually have a smartphone? Okay, right. So based on Rick Underhile's, Dr. Underhile's keynote there, we are very dependent on the phones. And I almost went to pick up my iPhone 4S today, first, but I guess I'll have to wait. What's interesting about mobile development and mobile in general is that it truly is changing the way we live. So my first question, why mobile? Well, we could give a number of reasons. But why not just look at education, our industry, because that's what we understand best. We could talk about maybe the hospitality industry and how phones help to find restaurants, but let's talk about how mobile changed our industry and to really make this case for mobile. So some of the things that I noted was how students have changed their learning styles, how faculty can now use things like Twitter to extend time on task by engaging students while they're on the bus, while they're perhaps at home, with information about subject matter that's distributed through text messages. How with programs like Sally, you can have a clicker system without students having to buy them, but actually doing that off the phone. So mobile definitely changes how we all interact in schools. And of course, emergency notifications, those are all well-known areas of change. I'd like to now take a few minutes to show you a video which comes from one of the vendors supporting education to show how education is impacted by mobile. And what I will do here for the sake of a good experience, I'll buffer this for a moment. The reason why I'm showing you a video is because mobile is all about experience. It's so difficult to explain to someone why I'm using the iPhone versus the Android, okay? I mean, I could give you reasons, but it's all about the experience. And so what you will see in adoption of mobile is that people who have never tried it, then they just will not understand it. So it's the experience that we're looking at, and this is why I'm showing the videos. Let's take a look at those.
Experience need to go. It's already mobile and getting smarter. Each should make a classroom just the beginning. It needs to make life easier and create connections.
Extra tickets are now available for tonight's game.
To help us make the right decisions. It should find you anywhere, no matter what role we play. Telling us how we're performing.
We have students practicing increasing freshman retention in the room.
It needs to simplify the day-to-day.
Okay, the funds have been transferred.
Oh, great, thank you.
Let me bring up a slide on how right now.
It should help us work together in new ways, in the classroom or anywhere else. The education experience should build on everyone's best.
So I think this is a good introduction to the fact that mobile is changing the way we live. And how many of you have mobile apps from the university or college organization that you belong? Are you aware of mobile apps that have been developed for you? Okay, so actually there's a number of ways of being part of the mobile experience, and some colleges actually choose to provide just like we look at development of the internet, where is my website, right? The first website that came up, everybody wanted to have a website at some point. Well, do you have a presence in the mobile market? Do you have a presence in the Apple Store or on the Android market? Because the experience over the mobile web is really not there yet. So the connectivity, the various screen sizes of phones are a challenge. So my next program here has to do with how colleges and why they would like to develop their own mobile apps.
Our students are always connected, always on.
75% of our students have some kind of a smartphone. The number in 2 years' time will be 100%.
Everyone understands that a mobile strategy for a university has to involve handheld devices. So what Northwestern University has done with Mobile Central is we built a Northwestern University iPhone app, BlackBerry app, and a direct web mobile presence.
When I first saw it, my reaction was, wow, we need to have this at Northwestern. It's a lot like the difference between having a computer and your mobile phone.
I thought it was cool that our school had its own app.
It spoke highly of Northwestern that they were trying to incorporate this technology. They recognize how good this is and how good apps are.
When I was a freshman, the iPhone wasn't out yet. Now you look around and tons of people have iPhones and Blackberries. Students are coming here expecting a lot more from the university. When I first saw the application, it was very exciting because of the possibilities that would apply here in terms of viewing shuttle times, class schedule or maps, also athletics and different events going on campus.
If I'm ever sitting bored on a Friday night and I don't have to work, I'm like, oh, what can I do tonight? Let's check out the calendar.
I was trying to figure out exactly when an event was happening on campus. There's a ton of stuff going on that I had no idea was going on.
Coming on campus freshman year, having this app on your phone would be super helpful.
I use the library one because it's a lot more convenient than turning on my computer. I've been looking for really specific stuff for my research. I've been able to find all the books I needed on the app.
Having the information on the go, I think that's the key.
It was the first day of my discussion section. I was running late and I didn't know what building it was in, but I used that map and it was really helpful.
Apologize for that experience. The network is always part of it.
Slightly closer to on time.
Sometimes, believe it or not, when I'm sitting here at my desk, I will actually grab my iPhone and use the directory app off the iPhone rather than use the one that's on my desktop. I think the development of it went very quickly because we were fortunate to have a good team from Blackboard.
The two principals for Mobile Central, they're fresh from being students. This whole initiative is about bringing to students the information where and how they want to use it. Universities can be somewhat glacial from when we signed our contract to the point it showed up in the iPhone store. It was a period of 9.5 weeks, which was just an extraordinary turnaround for us.
I think the important thing is really to build on what we've done.
I'm excited about what the future holds.
They'll be able to add and drop classes and buy tickets.
Show GPS applications.
I'll go ahead and stop it here. I think that the point was well made that, in fact, universities do benefit. And if you consider the fact that we all have limited resources, really, how can we get these apps developed? I love the picture of the team that is developing the apps for Blackboard. You know, really young people right out of school, the opportunities that exist for mobile development. So later on today, I'll show you some tools that you can bring in on your campus that make the curve of learning app development very much available to most computer science students, not just the ones that perhaps you know, are very, very skilled in programming, but not only programming, but just developers can now produce mobile apps. So how many of you feel like you have programmers that maybe your IT office could spare for mobile development? Okay, not very many. So it's a challenge. So we see the two reasons for mobile development. One is we would like our students to have the opportunities to be part of this new market and this really growing need. And the second is that we would like to have our own university apps and provide things like location of buses or parking ramp locations, phone directories, and all these services that make sense on mobile. So I want to move forward here, and being how the network is semi-helpful here, I'll go ahead and move through the next few videos up to this slide. Really, is there need in the workforce for what we're talking about? Let me see if there's. And the answer is yes. In fact, I have a link here to a website that talks about six-figure salaries, and the first one that they mention is mobile application developer, right? So a lot of times when we create an academic program, it has to be driven by need in the community. Here at GRCC, we are creating an information security degree, and as part of it, we will have a class on mobile development and security. And so there are a few resources out there that tell us that, in fact, there is a need in the community. So you can use that as perhaps a driving force for implementing courses that teach mobile. If we move forward, in terms of growth of mobile, we can only really expect it to go forward. I mean, think about what's happening today with the iPhone release. You know, the hype. How many of you are planning on getting the iPhone 4S? All right, and if it was iPhone 5, would more of you get it? Right, right.
It's better to buy an iPhone 4 now, though.
Say it again? You still got 3 in your pocket.
Get a 4 now.
There you go, exactly. Now, to me, it's just wonderful how this you know, fruit company is able to market their products and produce all this hype, and people will spend $400 on a phone, right? So the growth is going to be great in this area. So what are some of the tools that we can use to really give good start to students? Well, the tool that I want to share with you today is called Titanium. And Titanium is very unique in phone and mobile development. There are a number of ways to do mobile development. Most large companies like Blackboard will have a separate team for iPhone, separate team for Android, and separate for BlackBerry, and maybe even separate for mobile web. Well, we can't really teach all these languages to students, and yet they would like to know how to develop for all these phones. So what we have today are projects, software pieces, IDEs, or integrated development environments that allow you to build software and then simply distribute it to multiple phones. Apple has their iOS University, and you can be part of that. Android has also an educational program. But again, developing with these languages and with these SDKs does take a little bit of startup time. And I would say this, that if you are going to develop games, if you're going to develop video-intensive software, then yes, you have to go to those core languages like Objective-C for Apple or Java for Android. But if you're going to develop business apps, so applications that really have repeating modules, like for your university, you may have mapping module, you may have a bus module. These are business applications. For those, you really can use a higher level development environments that are much quicker in terms of learning. Now, I'm actually an Android developer, and I'm an Apple developer, and I have developed with Objective-C and Java and other languages. And it is difficult, okay? Difficulties on many levels. One is, Apple, for example, for people who sign up to be developers and pay the fees, has a legal agreement where you are not allowed to share information about the development process and the development itself. So I learned to develop iPhone apps by watching YouTube videos of 12-year-olds because they were not aware of the legalities. And so when you search YouTube, you listen to these folks that explain in their own words and with their own jokes how to do that. It's a little bit of a humbling experience, but it was the only way really to do that. So there are challenges on many levels with going with some of those core languages. This is where this platform from a company called Appcelerator helps. Appcelerator is not the only company that pursues this kind of abstracted layer of programming for mobile. There are others. But what is unique about Appcelerator is that they are open source. And later on, I'll talk about how that attribute really helps with the adoption of the platform. Therefore, it helps with documentation and with community support. So on this slide, I mentioned this is all platforms on all platforms. Why? Because you can run Appcelerator Titanium development environment on a PC, on your HP or your IBM hardware. You can run it on a Mac. You can run it on Linux. That's important for us in education because if your computer lab doesn't have Macintosh computers for everyone, then you will have difficulty teaching Xcode and iPhone development with Objective-C. So what, if this is going to be an online course, what hardware do the students have at home? You see, with Appcelerator and this kind of general approach to platforms and the fact that the software is portable, you can create a course and you can make that course be very effective. So the idea is that we write the same code and the code is JavaScript-like. How many of you have heard about JavaScript? Okay, quite a few of you, because JavaScript, which was developed by Netscape, really won many important battles. It won with VBScript against Internet Explorer. Okay, it won really the battle of browsers. And anyone in web design today, or anyone that has developed any kind of a web page, is a little bit comfortable with JavaScript. So Appcelerator uses language where syntax is just like JavaScript. So again, what we're looking for is to massage the learning curve. All right. It is friendly to computer labs. It's friendly to home systems. Let's briefly look at the matrix that Appcelerator provides as far as installation goes. So we have Apple, we have Windows, we have Linux. We can develop software for Nuke. We can develop software for Android, iPhone, but also for desktop systems. So imagine maybe a course where you do introduction to programming, And it really doesn't matter that much what language you're using, because you're teaching simple loops, you're teaching if statements. If you can develop a simple app and then show students how that app runs on their phone, how it runs on any type of a computer. This is where Appcelerator really shines. Here is another issue that's very common to mobile development questions. Let me full screen this. And the issue is, should we do this as a web application, or should we do this as a native app? So the difference is, you can have an interface on your phone with buttons, with pictures, with data, but every time you click on the button, there's a delay because you're actually using a web page that mimics an application. And that works well when your network connectivity is efficient. Now, with my YouTube experience this morning, that is not always true. So, while, again, there is a discussion in the community about that, I think the growing consensus is that native apps is where the experience really is, because you can guarantee experience on a native app. You cannot do that very well on a web connected web-only app. But I do want to bring this out, that you could teach app development for mobile devices just based on your web design curriculum. Basically, it's a set of cascading styling sheets, set of JavaScript libraries that allows you to create interfaces and present them as if they were mobile apps. Some of the challenges, of course, would be you are not going to be in the App Store. Basically, users would have to go to your web page and then add the page as a home link. And so that's how you end up on the phone. I think that the web formatting really lends itself well to our existing university web pages. That should be one of the priorities for a university, to provide a web-friendly interface to their site. If you consider maybe WordPress, did you notice, or Wikipedia even, when you visit it on your phone, you can clearly read the content, and the menus are optimized so you can actually click them with your finger. So I think this is the role of mobile web, is to optimize existing pages. But the native app development is where it's at. And there's, again, where Appcelerator shines, because it provides that native development. Just to show an overview of how it works, we write single code in Appcelerator. Then there's a set of layers that end up creating native code for the various devices. All right? And then this native code you can extract, and you can upload to the Android market or upload to the iPhone App Store. Any questions so far? Gary?
So do you have to have a computer that can have the SDKs for Apple and different apps on it that can support it? Or can you just have this on one computer and those SDKs on other computers?
Very good question. Thank you for that. So there are a few requirements, and let me run you through what it takes to submit an iPhone app to the Apple Store, and we'll take it through how this might happen in Appcelerator. If you're creating an iPhone app just with the tools that Apple provides, you have to have an Apple computer, right? There's no way around that. You have to have an Apple computer. You download an application called Xcode, which includes something called SDK, or Software Development Kit. You can only download this application once you signed up as an Apple developer. Okay, at this point, you do not have to pay anything. You will have to pay if you would like to be able to submit your application to the Apple Store. So you're developing your app in a language called Objective-C. You compile the app. You can then test the app with an SDK emulator. And I'll show this in a moment. An emulator is basically a software phone that allows you to test your application to a certain degree. Once you're happy with the application, you compile it, you sign it with certificates that identify you as the developer, and then you can go ahead and submit it for review to the Apple Store. There's a committee that reviews your app, and then it gets approved and posted on the market to be downloaded by users. With Appcelerator, there is an application that you download from Appcelerator.com, and you do have to sign up for an account with Appcelerator. That's a free account before you download. Once you've downloaded just the Appcelerator, you can start writing apps. Okay, so you can do the development of apps. In order to test the app in an emulator, you have to download an SDK either for Android, or SDK for BlackBerry, or SDK for iOS. Okay? So let's say that you have no Macintoshes at all on your campus. You can download Appcelerator, start developing the apps. If you would like to test them as an Android device, and as an Android device, you can have an Android tablet emulator, you can have a phone emulator, different sizes of screens. You have to go on the Android website, sign up as an Android developer, and download the SDK. So in a fully functioning development environment, you would like to have the Android SDK, the Apple SDK, and the Appcelerator. Because that way you can actually test all your phone platforms. Right? So you can start developing right away by just downloading Appcelerator. Any other questions at this point? All right, so I hope that you see the value in education to provide a simplified development environment for students, but also for people perhaps that you already have on staff. You know, and I hate to throw out the titles, but maybe instructional designers, maybe technologists, who are not core programmers, but who perhaps are not afraid of JavaScript, and have them look at Appcelerator and start developing your apps. In addition to being portable, Appcelerator is also open source. How many of you know what open source is? All right, a few of you. So what are some of the programs that you use that are open source? What's that? WordPress. Okay, very good. Any other ones? Moodle. Okay, very good. So that's PHP, and it's open source. Opera, excellent. A very innovative browser. If you have not tried Opera yet, I think opera.org is the website, and they do a great job introducing new features to the browser that later are taken by other browsers. Anybody uses Firefox? All right, so you are using open source. You'll be surprised how often you use open source. If you use Blackboard, you use things like Apache, Tomcat, all of those are open source. Linux, exactly. Or Apple, there is a Debian Linux underneath that. So we use open source all the time without knowing it. And one of the reasons why is because of the momentum that open source products get with adoption, right? If you look at how much it costs perhaps to buy Microsoft Office suite in another country, what you'll find, and I've seen some charts that show on other continents, it may take many years of a person's income to be able to afford a legal copy of that software. So we have OpenOffice, openoffice.org, which will open Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, and edit them. So the rest of the world is one of the reasons why open source is strong. But the benefit of large adoption and quick adoption is that we have documentation, okay, we have case studies. When you type in your error in Google, there's going to be answers for it, right? I was laughing at GVSU, we were talking about Cold Fusion product that they use, and we were using it as well. But they're using it on AIX. So when they put their error in, they see a question they posted 5 years ago, right? Because those are basically limited communities. Therefore, your ability to resolve problems is going to be limited. So Appcelerator has this added advantage of being open source. And I do want to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move to the video and let it buffer for a while. I do want to stress that open source is not only adoption, but it's also security of the product, because you have many eyes looking at it. With Linux, for example, you know, it's a great example how a small open source project received support from companies like IBM and Novell and others, and really is now in the data center for IT. It's one of the main systems. Please.
Can I take you down a little bunny trail?
Say it again?
Can I take you down a little bunny trail?
Please,
Do we have
please.
a moment? I'm relatively new to instructing. I've been doing teaching for 2 years. I've been in computer science industry for a long time and love open source. Is there any particular ways that we can encourage our students and our organizations to contribute to open source projects that you know of?
So you're asking a tricky question, because how can we get our organizations to use open source is the first question, and then how can we get them to contribute? And I think number one would be to help folks realize how much open source we are already using. Okay, so maybe creating a web page in your technology department to say, this is what we're using from open source. And one of the easiest way to contribute to open source is to provide download mirrors. Now that costs money, because you have to have a server, you have to have a space and bandwidth. And you know, you go to an IT office and you ask for those three and they laugh, right? But if you do not have a programmer who can contribute to open source, you can do it by contributing as a download mirror. I happen to teach a class on Linux administration, as well as Apache administration and security. So we take source code and we compile it into enterprise software in that class. And the issue, of course, is that students love it, the industry loves it, but overall, we as an organization are slow to adoption of open source. Now, Moodle is an example of an open source project that is adopted, but for all the wrong reasons, I believe. Because what's the reason that typically people drop a commercial product and go to open source? Money, right? Okay, so that is one element in the matrix. I believe that the reason why people go from Windows to Linux is the security, the performance, the investment of intellectual property of the administrators who in the 80s learned Unix, and they still use the same commands right today, whereas with Windows you pretty much have to relearn every new version of that operating system. So that would be my suggestion, to sort of wave the flag of open source and perhaps provide some infrastructure. It can be as easy as maybe contacting your local Linux user group. We have grlog here. There's a Lansing Linux user group, and they will have these parties where they will bring in install media, and that way new folks can try Linux on their computers, oftentimes without even installing it. See, Linux is smart enough where you can put a CD-ROM in, start the computer, and it'll use a new operating system without touching the hard drive, which is why it's used so often for security tools and for recovering disks. Does that help, perhaps? Okay, let's look at this introduction, because it's going to talk about Appcelerator as a company and their open source.
Successful, they must be part of a company's culture. By that I mean it influences every aspect of how they build, manage, and market their products. With open technologies and open source, you get to leverage kind of the best minds throughout the world versus being limited to just the four walls of a given company.
One of the compelling arguments was that the closed web, the web that's proprietary, doesn't allow anyone to really understand anything unless it's on someone's proprietary platform and it's given to you in a really specific manner. Then it's really sort of difficult to learn it and consume it and share ideas about it.
With global internet and global community of developers building and extending the platform, we really can actually innovate, everybody gains, everybody benefits from that. The web as we know it is really changing. We've gone from a document retrieval web to now much more of a dynamic, rich environment where you can mix services and facilities all over the web, different devices, and it's really changing into much more of an application-oriented web these days. We need different tools for different capabilities to be able to support that. Titanium is one of those tools that we hope to actually provide developers with a toolkit for building these rich desktop-based applications or mobile-based applications and extend really the browser and the web to the desktop.
Software distribution via the internet is a great thing, but we all know that browsers were not built to be application platforms. We're now at a point where we can combine the easy distribution afforded by the web with the native capabilities of the desktop. It seems clear that this is the future of web applications.
When you build an application with Titanium, you can actually leverage the desktop services that are available in the computer. For example, you can actually have access to offline services or the file system. You can actually run your application when you're disconnected from the internet as well as when you're connected to the internet. You can build more rich applications that are accessing the desktop that you can't do when you're in a normal browser. So today, if you're building a native application for Windows, for example, you use the .NET SDK to build that native application. Or, for example, for Mac, you would use Objective-C to actually build a desktop application. But if you're building a browser-based application, you use a different set of technologies, HTML, JavaScript, for example. What we're trying to do with Titanium is to be able to merge those two together. So you can actually use the same technologies for web that are very ubiquitous, but actually be able to deliver those applications to the desktop and have integrated capabilities to the desktop.
The most successful open source projects have been those that address large horizontal markets. It's hard to get larger and more horizontal than web development.
Our goal is to use a common open web set of technologies versus a proprietary set of technologies to build applications. Open source is more about a philosophy and a way of development, a way of collaboration than it is a product release cycle or distribution. It's about standing on the shoulders of giants and using a community of developers worldwide to actually build a great product, potentially a product that maybe has lots of different features than the original people who designed the product ever envisioned.
Adobe Air is a great product, but we really believe there's room for, and frankly a need for, an open source alternative.
So we believe that web platforms and web tools should be free. They should be freely available for everybody to actually build great applications. The application ultimately is what's important.
All right, so what they're talking about is that there's a business model behind it, all right? So just because Linux is open source doesn't mean that our students who are learning about Linux will never make any money on it. In fact, large companies like IBM have found that to be quite an appealing proposition. I do want to quickly explain the legal aspect, and Gary is not going to share counsel here with us, but here's how licenses work, okay? We have a spectrum of licenses. There's a commercial license, one that perhaps you have for your Windows product, and with the commercial license, you have only the compiled code, which means that you cannot modify it, you cannot add features, you really are also not allowed to distribute it by license. On the other hand, we have something in public domain, right? Which means that you can take it, you can use it, and in public domain, the author also has released their right of ownership of that piece. Now, in between, there is a number of licenses. I would say that in the middle, there is a license called GPL. And the general public license is an open source license that says when you write software, distribute it with the code that's humanly readable so others can look through it. When you distribute a code with this license, you can modify it, you can distribute it. But if you're going to distribute your modifications, you have to include it under the same license. Okay, and so that's a GPL license. There are other licenses. A license a little bit closer to public domain from GPL would be a BSD license, which says, hey, you can sell this product, you can change the content of the system, but we ask you that you include the attribution, the names of the original developers. And again, it's a spectrum of licenses. Appcelerator is distributed under Apache license, which simply means go ahead and use it. go ahead and make money on it. That's not a problem. But if you're going to create an application with Appcelerator, make sure to provide in credits the reference that this was created with Appcelerator tool. So a number of licenses in the spectrum, and the open source licenses provide us with more flexibility. So let me show you what Appcelerator actually looks like. We go to the website. We can download the Appcelerator Titanium platform. Again, Appcelerator is the company name. Titanium is the name of the product. This is what the environment will look like. We have a software version of a phone where we can test an application. We have files that are part of the project. And then we have the code itself. And you can see that the code looks very much like JavaScript. So again, the learning curve for a web designer or technologist that's familiar with the web would be not that steep. Here is an example of an app that was developed with Appcelerator, because we can ask that question, you know, are there any good apps that were developed with this tool? And the answer is yes. We have an app here that was developed for NBC. We have an app for Sugar CRM and other well-known companies. NBC specifically, of course, had need for video and the ability to share that.
Now you can take NBC with you wherever you go. Catch previews and highlights. Yeah, tell us a story. Or customize the app to get content from your favorite shows.
All right, so you get the idea that there are some good apps developed with this tool. And before I actually jump into showing Appcelerator on my system, I want to show you that, in fact, there are schools like this one here that have already included Appcelerator in their curriculum.
My name is Jeff Haney, local Silicon Valley entrepreneur. It's my third venture-backed startup, so I've been doing this a little bit. Most all technology companies have been in technology for quite a while.
All right, so basically what we're talking about is not all that crazy, right? That's what I wanted to share. So let's look at the Titanium platform. I'm going to show you the platform on a Macintosh system so that we can actually see the multi-platform approach. One thing that you will learn with development is patience. Okay, so this is what the environment looks like. And there are instructions out there on how to install it. Again, because of it being open source, there's quite a few suggestions when you see errors what to do. If you wanted to create a new application, you would simply go to File, New, then select the kind of a project that you would like to develop, and you can see that there's quite a few different kinds. And we'll choose a mobile project. And next, we'll be able to choose the platforms. Okay, so I've selected to create an application that will be for an iPad, iPhone, and Android. And on an Apple system, it'll actually create a common program for both iPad and the iPhone. So you do not have to do like the twice, the size. It's a native app for it. So here's our demo app, and we'll give it a name. We'll provide basic information. We'll say finish. I want to thank our DLIT folks again, because when I was working on this in their office, I had a really fast computer. This is a 2-year-old system that is sort of dragging its feet on some of these things. So all I did is I created a new project, and now I will say, go ahead and run it as an iPhone simulator. So I wrote no code yet, okay? This is just everything out of the box. So what's happening now as the hamster behind this software is running, it's starting up the iOS SDK, and it's going to create the emulator.
What versions of the SDK? Is it iOS 5 yet?
It is, yes. So especially for this presentation, I made sure that we have the newest iOS. So when you pick up your iPhone 4S from the store, that's what you will see. So this demo app, so just by saying create a new project, it creates a couple of buttons for us, a little tab. So you already have some code populated for you. Now the actual simulator is a working phone. So you can include pages. For example, I linked here to our ETOM news feed. So let's see. Here's Gary who's tweeting about the session. Basically, as you develop the app, you can go through all the functions as if it was an actual phone. Let's see. What I can do from here is I can say, let's go to this website, and I can now in iOS 5 I have this tweet button, so I can do that, and I can say
You get a full-size keyboard.
That's right. That's right. That's one advantage. Yes, you can type much faster. And now we, of course, created an actual tweet that that's going to be shared on the Twitter site momentarily, right? So, in terms of playing with phones, with development, really this is the way to do that, because you can't buy an iPad for a new version of iPad at the moment it comes out or over the phone. With Android, it's the same story. You get different sizes of the phones, different models to play with. So let's briefly look at a different app that is actually delivered with the environment called the kitchen sink. And as you may expect, it has everything. So the idea is that you can look at the app and then take the code that they developed so that you copy and paste, right? So we went from JavaScript to copy and paste. Now that's the kind of learning that you want to have. So let's perhaps go to let's see, to views and image views and then animate it. And so underneath, inside of the project, there's code to show you how to do this neat little trick. We can go to model. Let's see. Let's go back here. We can go to where did my windows come from? Well, the app is so rich that the little point got lost here. Let's see. I'm looking for modal views. Yeah. Well, that's okay. Let's try the mashups. Here's a few tricks on how to include mashups in your own app. So not only the animations, you saw the opening screen where the animation rotated the screen. There's a code for that already inside. Any types of buttons that you can have on the phone, examples included. But here you have integration with Twitter, with Facebook. All you do is copy and paste and make it part of your app. All right? Well, my presentation ends here. Are there any questions, anything that you'd like to ask about the Appcelerator and how you can create a course with it, but also how really you can have folks in your office give it a try? Please.
Are there any of the educational institutions that I guess are sharing their code for some of their mobile apps they developed, or is using this just as easy to go ahead and create your own with all this drag and drop?
Yeah, so and I'll provide a link to the presentation. Actually, if you go to Twitter and look for the ETOM hashtag, I create a link. Stanford has a video on how they are teaching Appcelerator. There is a set of demo apps out there. In fact, Appcelerator is creating now a market where you can develop sample code and you choose whether you will charge for it or not. And many people show free for whatever integrations. I am not aware of, say, open courseware where you can just download a course, maybe and import in Moodle or into Blackboard. I hope that here at GRC we can develop a course and then perhaps share it. But no, at this point I don't know where you can just download and like test, assessments and so forth. I'm not sure that that's already prepared. Yep, please.
Is your GRCC mobile app, I've downloaded and looked at it. It's very cool. Did you develop that?
Yes.
Is that part of Blackboard?
No.
You can see where there's class cancellations and parking and so on.
Right.
I don't know if folks would be interested in seeing that, but that was
yep.
very cool.
Yeah, so if you go to Apple Store and you look for GRCC, I did develop this app, and the first version of this app was in Objective-C, and it was very enjoyable, okay, very hard work, but then I tried to make Android app look exactly the same, and it was hard, but we did that. And then we wanted to add more features, and then I found Appcelerator and just settled with Appcelerator for that app. So yes, we're doing parking locations, building locations. We have integration with a phone directory. And we're looking to grow this and perhaps get students involved. Some of the things that need to be done in that app are measuring and then finding longitudinal latitude for certain things. For example, we have radar cards, and there are certain deposit boxes across campus. And students suggested they would like to know where they are and find directions to them. So all we need is a student to send out and see where those actually are, because honestly I don't know, and note the X and Y, and we'll include that in the app. Yeah.
You mentioned building blocks.
Sure.
So are there components, building block type things that we could get? I see there's many in the kitchen sink, obviously.
Right.
But then.
Yes, on the Appcelerator website, there is a marketplace where samples of code can be either purchased or downloaded for free. In the past, those samples were in blogs. People just said, hey, here's what I developed, you can download it. But now they've organized that around a little marketplace. Mm-hmm. Question?
You're creating a project file on a Mac, and you move that same project file to a Windows base and go back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah, so the code that you're developing is, has an abstraction layer, and that's the nice thing, is that you can move it across platforms. And then most of all, see, when the iPads came out and we had an iPhone app, it worked, but it was in the middle of the screen, right? You had to do like twice to make it bigger. So all I had to do was just recompile it with the new Appcelerator SDK, and it provided the full-featured screen. So as new devices come out, you don't have to redevelop the wheel. Now, if you're a company, a large company that has a lot of young people that know Android and iPhone, that's great. But if you don't, and it sounds like many of us have issues with the resources, it's great to have this kind of abstraction layer for development. Very good. Well, thank you very much for listening, and thank you.